Richards trying to scoot in there alone. It pinballs to the crease.
Let's get it.
Oh my God! Here we go.
You're listening to the Pod Street Bullies Podcast with your hosts, Derek.
How you gonna get it, Bobby?
John. Matt Casey.
Unnecessary, but totally necessary.
And Cody.
What's not to love?
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Pod Street Bullies. My name is Derek.
And I'm John. What's going on, everybody?
And we're joined, as always, by the Matt Casey. What's up?
Hey, how's it going? We got some rain today, guys. I'm excited. My lawn's watered. It's good stuff.
Oh, man, it's been brutal. We were supposed to get rain. It kept getting pushed back, and they're like, no rain.
We got dumped on it. I've never been happier to see rain in my life.
Speaking of dumped on, Hoagie, too. What's up, man?
Hey, I'm here. We got dumped on up here, too.
All right.
We were swimming at work.
Thanks for letting us know, Hoagie. Nobody cares.
Thanks, John.
Like I said, speaking of dumped on. So, folks, everyone listening, we are going to go over the report card that has surfaced on Twitter from The Athletic in terms of confidence in the players, probably a better way to put it. We also have part 2 of Thrive or Die, which I know you all have been looking forward to all week. But again, first off, we're going to hit on the report card here that Hoagie has made a lovely graphic for that we're going to display right now. There it is.
He made a lovely graphic for it.
He didn't make it. I'm just kidding. That was already made. He just put it in the channel
I
here.
converted it.
Are we supposed to give some sort of works cited at the bottom of this, Hoagie, so we don't get sued?
I did allude to the fact that it was given to the public.
What was the name of the author guy?
Couldn't tell you. I know it's The Athletic, though.
Dom. What do you say his last name?
Dom L.
Right.
Dom L from The Athletic. So
we're knocking it out of the park already.
They did one of these things for every single NHL team, going over the public's confidence, the fan base's confidence, roster building, cap management, draft and develop, trading for agency, vision, and total for those of you listening as opposed to watching. And then at the very bottom there, they have your change in confidence over the last year split between the public and the fan base. Needless to say, again, for those of you listening and not watching, the grade's not good. And we're going to break this down, probably not segment by segment, but we're going to touch on a few of these. So John had an idea as to what he wanted to start with here. So where do we want to go with this, John?
Well, I think when you look at this, right, it's all D-minuses from the public and the fan base. I'm not surprised by the fan base giving all D-minuses. I mean, everybody is really furious about this. I am a little surprised about the public because you'd think that they'd have a little bit more of like a neutral view on it. When I look at roster building and cap management, I totally agree. I agree with free agency and vision. I might even give vision an F just because these days it just doesn't look like there is a vision. But when you look at something like draft and development, that's a reactionary grade. How can you go that far and say that this team, under the current regime, has drafted and developed poorly? I almost think at this point it's the exact opposite. When you hear some of these big names like Forrester, Cutter Gauthier, Emile Andre, there's excitement about. There are legitimate prospects within this system where I would give it a C just because I feel like you can't go either way, either really bad or really good until you know. And as far as trading goes, that's another one that I'd probably go up to about a C because I think that we've received our best acquisitions through trades, not free agency. And we can argue about the amount that we've traded for some of these players. but I just don't think it's been bad enough to go that low.
I have a couple questions in regards to this type of list too, and a lot of it would kind of relate to what you just said. Like, how far back do we go? Is this a 5-year grade? Is this a 10-year grade? And in terms of, that you kind of go list by list, like roster building. How have you built the roster over the past 10 years? I feel like a D- doesn't do it too much justice. Cap management, yes, there's a bit of recency bias in there because we're a bad team. We're up against the cap or over the cap, really.
Over, yeah.
Draft and development, like my only thing with that is, and what could justify the D- in this category is looking at the picks like Provorov, like Konechny, and how they were supposed to be these just superstars. And they haven't panned out to be as much as of right now.
Sure.
Did they show glimpses? Sure. I mean, Provorov at least did. So maybe that weighs a bit heavier. And I mean, think about it. In terms of draft and development, like how can we grade a guy like Gauthier? How can we grade a guy like York even? That's a tough one.
I'll argue this, Derek, on the draft and development. I think all of us are kind of feeling that that's like, okay, D- is a little bit extreme there because, as you said,
sure,
who knows how these next couple of years pan out. But even with the Provorov, the Konechny, the Carter Harts, who are all drafted guys that have come up through the system,
the Morgan Frost,
those are all guys. Yes, are they superstars? No, but Konechny's had his moments, Provorov's had his moments, Hart's had his moments. So at the very least, that's a C. Like at least that at least deserves a C.
And what about like Joel Farabee? If we're gonna do that, you have to put in the players like that.
The only bona fide F we have is Mr. Nolan Patrick. Like that is an F in every single in every single way, shape, and form. What I'll say about the overall D- is they don't give a lot of those out. They like to give a lot more D pluses than D minuses. So,
right. I mean, if you're gonna give a D-, you might as well just fail the person.
That's just like, hey, you were about 1% shy of failing, but we didn't want to fail you. Like, I can relate. I get that.
Yeah, but what's the saying? D's get degrees, right? Something like that.
Yeah, but D's don't get Stanley Cups.
Never heard that. Did people have to tell you that, Hoagie?
Yeah, sometimes.
That's what it was. Yeah.
No, it's an interesting list. I mean, when you look at the rankings by category there, again, the roster building, cap management, blah, 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 they never rank above 31st in any of those when it comes to the NHL teams. Everything's either 31st or 32nd. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think it is a bit reactionary considering this offseason. But yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat here as John. I do think that this is a little bit harsh.
What do you think,
Hoagie? Good throw.
I mean, as a fan, I think it's totally deserving just from what we've seen from the outside looking in. But I am surprised by some of these with the draft and develops, like we've all said, that I don't think we deserve a D- because a lot of the development is on this roster. I think it might be other parts where, it's the constant injuries and stuff like that that's kind of bringing our grade down on that. Free agency, I think we definitely should have done better, but we shot ourselves in the foot because we're incompetent and don't know how to do that. And I think that just plays right into trading, where we should have traded some bad contracts to make some room for some people. But I think a lot of these are pretty realistic, except for the draft and development. I mean, the vision is really realistic because there is none from what we can tell right now.
Yeah, I agree with John. That should be an F.
I could argue that, though. And just to play devil's advocate for a second, think about, again, we go back to whether this is a 5-year, 10-year, whatever. The vision for this team when Chuck Fletcher took over looked fairly good when you're bringing in guys like Niskanen, you're bringing in guys like Braun. On the surface, before we knew anything about what's going on with Ryan Ellis, bringing him in was a plus because not only do you bring in a bona fide top-pairing defenseman, you get rid of Nolan Patrick, the F in the group here.
Right.
yes, recently the vision is a complete F.
Yeah.
We don't know what direction this team's going. But speaking of like timelines here, I think that maybe a D- is fair given how bad and how the lack of direction this team has now. But ask us this 2-3 years ago, I don't think it's nearly as harsh.
No.
Well, and I think one of the things that like I'm able to take away from this, I mean, to be blunt, this Dom fella he is a big underlying numbers guy. He's one of those advanced stats people that like I tend to think that he attracts that crowd. And obviously the advanced stats people are critical in certain areas that we might not be. But one of the things that I'm able to take away from this is one, obviously the fan base is pissed. Like we knew that, but also like the public view of this team isn't much better. Like, you know, you could spend all the time in the world just kind of dissecting these grades and saying, should they be higher? Should they be lower? I think even if they go a little bit higher, you're still looking at, well, the fan base and just the general hockey fan thinks that this team is in the dumpster.
Yeah. And I think one thing I'll throw in there too is, you know, I know we're talking about players, but just being a little bit, again, a devil's advocate here. When you look at free agency, can you count Tortorella in that free agency kind of pool? Because like that is a huge move. And, you know, I don't know what was going on today, but, you know, Islander fans were freaking out because they like, you know, signed a 1-year deal for somebody and everyone's like, oh my God. It's like, look, I still think the Islanders are a better team than us, but like, did they get better this year? Probably not, because they lost one of the top coaches in the country that, you know, besides the 2 teams playing in the Stanley Cup this last year, I would say 30 other teams around the league would like drop their pants to get their hands on the guy. So like, I think, you know, I think there is something to be said for that. And maybe that can then blend into vision, but like that's grasping at straws a little bit. Like that's me really reading between the lines and putting contextual relevancy into it. But Derek, did you want to talk about the confidence?
So yeah, but I mean, I feel like there's still a little bit more to unpack in terms of these grades as well. Like, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I just think like I hate making excuses because I think even if I do make an excuse for this team, I'm still not happy with the direction that it's gone. However, Derek, you kind of brought this up before. Like when you look at roster building, right? The roster that Chuck Fletcher had planned for this team last year was not the roster he was able to ice. Now, there could be other things involved in that. Maybe Nashville pulled one over on us and knew that Ryan Ellis was not going to be able to play and that they were essentially getting rid of that money without Chuck Fletcher knowing. That's possible. I can't go that deep. I don't have any source to tell me such a thing.
Dude, Myers can't play either.
But like,
Nolan Patrick.
Is it really the organization's fault that like not only did their roster players but their prospects all suffered injury last year? You know, I think that like our frustration just in this organization is what gets us to that drastic D-. But like if you were legitimately giving this person a grade like you would like if you were a teacher and you were giving, you know, a kid a grade, like it is a little dramatic because again, this team just wasn't what Chuck Fletcher envisioned it to be last year.
Yeah. It's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction in terms of the grades. Because again, you know, the knee-jerk reaction is going to be based off of the last year, the last 2 years. Sure, you know, but span back a little bit when you've got guys that you're drafting that are key components to this team. Your Carter Harts, your Travis Sanheims, your Ivan Provorovs, your Konechny's, like your Sean Couture's, if you want to go back that far. This team has a lot, and I'd say a majority of homegrown talent. So never mind the fact that the team just isn't that good, but like when it comes to drafting and development, if you're going to grade with no curve, like a lot of the guys that you drafted are part of the team now and they're mainstays on the roster. So that right there, to me, I think, again, just displays a knee-jerk reaction. Like that should be a bit higher in terms of draft and development. Trading again.
Sorry, do you feel that there's like disconnect too when people aren't giving the organization credit because those are all Chuck's or excuse me, Hextall's draftees basically.
Sure,
like the majority of those guys are. So it's like I can see the other side of that where it's like, what's Chuck really done? And it's way too early to tell. We're all rational fans at this point where it's like we don't know how last year's draft picks are going to get. But like we know that Hextall's did okay, or at least some of them did okay. Nobody's giving Chuck credit for that.
We're really high on Brink, though. A lot of people are really high on Forster.
Okay.
Ask certain people, they're high on Gautier, Cam York. Like, they're high on these kids, but they haven't had the chance to make an impact at the pro level. So, again, it's a little too early to call, in my opinion, when it comes to Chuck Fletcher.
Right.
I'm also just curious, like, if this entire thing was, if when they filled out this survey or whatever the heck it was, like, if it was like, think just this past season, like, I'm curious of like what, or if it left it open-ended, right? Just as a fan or as just an NHL follower, what do you think? And there was no sort of like criteria.
Sure.
Because
based on like what's below it change over the last year, like I'm making the assumption that this was over year, like or like within the last year. So like, but I don't know. How can you argue that if we're just looking at this last year? Like I can't make a decent argument that these
draft and development can't be it can't even be a category if that's the case.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Hoagie, you look like you got some thoughts bottled up here.
I mean, this is the large report card, right? This even stems to when we're even getting graded for free agency, and we're not getting graded for free agency because none of our signings are really that they don't pop off the page for anybody. So I mean, that's where the public comes into play. Where like we didn't really do anything to move the needle, and all of us live in different parts outside of Philadelphia in the United States, right? Up in Massachusetts, I put magnets on my truck. One guy's like, dude, if that was 5 years ago and the Flyers were good, people would be screwing with you. Now no one cares because your team sucks. Like that, it's just the brutal honesty that the whole outside world just doesn't view us as the Philadelphia Flyers of old, and we're just not being competitive.
Sure. Now, we did want to talk about the confidence. We'll call it the confidence meter. The public is 92% less confident in this team than they were last year. The fan base is 96% less confident. And to me,
just round it up. We're 100% less
100% less confident. To me, with this, I feel like this further exemplifies the vision grade, because confidence, to me at least, like is having confidence in the team moving forward if they're going to be good. So the vision of this team being bad does not inspire confidence. It shouldn't. And so it's just I'm not even going to say it shocks me, because it doesn't. Like, I was going to say it shocks me that confidence level is that low, but it doesn't. I mean, the public, okay, I don't know. Maybe it's just me being a Flyers fan. Like, I don't give a damn about what the public thinks. But, like, the fan base, I feel like all four of us here have a pretty good thumb on the pulse when it comes to that. You know, being on Twitter, seeing people talk about this stuff, you know, being for people that talk about this as well. Like, I feel like we got our thumb on the pulse when it comes to that.
Yeah. I mean,
I'd love to see where that meter is, like, halfway through the season, when this team is actually on the ice and we're seeing what the product is.
Sure.
I mean, Derek, you make a really good point where it's like, I would be curious to see what this would have looked like during like the middle of Ron Hextall's tenure, where it was like the team wasn't necessarily really good, but he had an obvious vision, right? And there was something to kind of like buy into, you know, where looking back on it, it's like, God damn it, fooled me. But like, at that point in time, you know, I was confident enough in his plan, in his vision, where it was like the team didn't necessarily need to be playing like a Stanley Cup contender for me to feel good about the franchise. I could kind of buy into the direction that it was going.
Because there was a direction.
Right. But right now, everybody's just so confused. And they go, in some extreme cases, people feel betrayed. You know, they feel like they were sold a false bill of goods. And now they just they do not trust this team anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, have they given the fans a reason to trust them?
No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we've gone through 2 years of just dismal hockey, and you can blame it on tons of other outside factors, and some of those are legit. Some of it's just excuses. But, I think, Derek, you're right that the confidence just reflects the vision. Because, like, there's no strategy. The execution on the strategy was non-existent because there was no strategy. And, like, there is no clear way for this team to get better. And we don't have cap space. We have long-term contracts. Like, a year from, at the trade deadline, maybe we get some relief with JVR and finally get rid of that wart. But, like, I think that's what that relates. It's that nobody can buy into the vision and see the way out of this to get excited.
Well, again, I mean, and I hate to bring it back up, but like you think about recency bias, like having the season that the Flyers had last season doesn't instill much confidence in anybody watching this team. So, I get the grades. I get the confidence level as well. Like, I completely understand why someone on the outside would be able to look at the season they had last year and say, yeah, not confident in this team moving forward. Pair that with the moves made on the surface to somebody who doesn't follow the Flyers or hockey as closely as, we would. They don't know what Nick Delorier brings to the team. They don't know potentially what Tony DeAngelo brings to the team, aside from the fact that, a lot of people are going to say that he's just a POS. It's the intricacies that we're a bit more in tune with, as opposed to the people who I don't want to necessarily say are casual hockey fans, but are more so hockey fans and don't pay too much attention to the Flyers themselves.
Yeah, I think the other thing looking at this is I don't know if they'll use it for bulletin board material or not, but, like, you have to think that some of the guys have at least heard about this and taken a look at it. And, like, if there's nothing more motivating than John just popped back in. Nothing more motivating than seeing you, not as one of their worst, as the worst team graded by the public and the fan base. Like, that's unbelievable. And nowhere to go but up. And, at least this year we can't be like, oh my God, I can't believe that we played this bad. It's like, there's no level of confidence. There's no expectations right now.
Right.
And maybe that's freeing. And maybe that's, maybe you are the team that's overlooked on a Wednesday night and, ends up getting lucky here and there. But there's nowhere else to go but up from this. Knock on wood.
Well, the funny thing is I don't even think the franchise is confident enough will be bad enough to, like, get a high draft pick. That's the funny thing about this is like, nobody's obviously confident that will be a good team, but there's some people, including me, where it's like, God, are we going to just be one of those middle of the road teams and end up getting like the 10th overall pick?
Right. Baby.
But
like, they made the moves this year that, like, you got a taste of both. Like, they signed Nick Delorier, which that's something when you're a bad team and you sign a guy like Nick Delorier, not that I'm saying he's bad, but that's indicative of not wanting to get better. Then you go out and get Tony DeAngelo, which is a sign of wanting to get better. So
And Torrance. And Torrance.
And Justin Braun.
And Justin Braun. Former Norris Trophy candidate Justin Braun. Yeah. So, I mean, do you guys want to add anything more to this conversation when it comes to the report card here?
I hate it.
Yeah.
This isn't one I show my parents. This is one of the ones that I would forge their signature so they didn't have to see it.
That was definitely my sister's report card, not mine.
That looked like mine, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
All right. Well, listen, we're going to take a real quick break here. We're going to shoot to an ad, and then when we get back from that ad, we're going to dive right back into our Thrive or Die segment where we dish on 5 people this time. So we'll catch you guys after the break. All right, fellas, we are back to talk Thrive or Die, the coined segment made up by us, which I think, what was it, Hoagie or Casey? Which one? I think it was
Casey.
Not Casey.
I made this up.
Okay.
We know Hoagie doesn't have that club in his bag.
I took it the brunt myself. You didn't even have to throw the shot.
I'd argue he doesn't really have a bag, but
I love to tally how many shots we all take at Hoagie throughout each episode. Just the Hoagie.
I want credit.
Tabs.
We should
You get
start
credit.
doing contests again. If you can correctly guess how many times we dump on Hoagie this episode, you get
You get a free T-shirt,
Free T-shirt. Hey, those T-shirts are really cool. Actually, I like those.
right?
Yeah,
I'm
they
glad you
fit
guys
well.
like them.
I washed it. It's looking good.
One of the best drunken decisions I ever made.
Yeah.
But getting back to Thrive or Die here real quick. Again, the whole premise of this is to talk about the players. Again, today we're talking about 5, and we're going to discuss whether we think they are going to thrive under John Tortorella or not actually die, but not play well under John Tortorella. So the first one that we're going to get into, and this was discussed in the group chat, Ryan Ellis. John, do you think Ryan Ellis is going to thrive or die under John Tortorella?
a wise man once said, "You cannot kill what is already dead."
Have we heard from Ryan Ellis recently?
Apparently.
I had to Google him before before this show, but
I got a race car driver.
Listen, this guy's. I don't think he's playing ever again, so he can't really thrive or die under Tortorella's system. You know, that's it. That's all I got to say.
Matt Casey. Flatlining. Oh,
Taps. I thought my computer was bugging out for a second.
that was good. Very. Wait, not over yet.
Just keep it going. It's a long version.
That was appropriate.
Yeah, you got no confidence. Even Tortorella came out today and said, like, yeah, he's probably not going to be starting the season.
It's not likely.
Yeah. So
What do you think, Ogie?
He's done.
I mean, he said that he wants to skate this season. I would love to see
So do I.
it. If he's healthy, I think he'll thrive. But for now, he's dead. We don't even know who he is. Haven't seen his face.
He's going to be doing free skates at the practice rink, like with Disco Saturday Nights with Ellis.
Yep.
Like, you can't kill what's already dead, you know. But
Stop beating the dead horse.
Yeah, but like, look at the standard now. Like that's the standard with Ryan Ellis. So anything above that, he thrives. Like
if he plays one game, he
thrives.
He thrived.
Exactly.
Still won the trade.
It's better than it was last year. So again, you know, as of right now, no. But if he comes back, maybe. Who knows? But moving forward here, we get to his replacement, Tony DeAngelo. So under John Tortorella, we're going to go reverse order here. Hoagie, does Tony DeAngelo thrive or die under Tortorella's system here? Tutelage,
I think he's
if you
thriving.
will.
Definitely think he's thriving. I think.
Care to elaborate?
Yeah, I'm getting there, John. Let me speak for once. My God.
We have
No,
to
I
mute
think-
John.
I already muted some comments. It was great. Listen, with a coach like Tortorella, he's going to thrive. It's a guy that holds him accountable. It's going to push him to his absolute best, and that's what he had in Carolina with Brindamore. I think it's just another coach that's going to help him really push and be the best Tony DeAngelo that we're going to want to see. And he's a no bullshit type of guy. Like, I'm excited for this one.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Casey?
I went back and forth on it. I have him. I'm like cheating a little bit. So originally I said die, but like I don't think he's going to die. I just don't think he's going to be like purely thriving. I think he's going to coast a little bit in the middle. So if I had to choose one or the other, I go dies. I think he plays well offensively, but I think the reason why he dies is not necessarily because of him. It's because where he's slotted. I just don't think our first pairing with he and Provorov are enough to let either of them really thrive to a point that they can. And I think Provorov is better suited, as we said last week, because he's very structured. DeAngelo is very free-flowing, Gustus Bear-esque. So I see that as a potential issue. I honestly don't think the off-ice stuff is going to be as big of an issue as the rest of the world thinks it's going to be. So I'm not
dare
factoring,
you?
I'm not factoring that into my equation. I just feel like the way that he is slotted into this lineup isn't beneficial for his success.
That's a fair point. What do you think, John?
I think he thrives, but I think there will be times when it gets ugly. Like I definitely see these two as incredibly competitive individuals, and I think that they will butt heads, down the road, probably more than once. And I don't think it'll be like Tony D'Angelo says something stupid. Like, I'm with you, Casey. I really don't think that that's going to be an issue, but I can see like him making an on ice decision that he feels passionate about, and Tortorella kind of, arguing with him about that. But I think at the end, those will be constructive moments because, again, they're both highly competitive. So I think that, like, although it might look ugly at times, I do think that Tortorella is going to get the best out of him, similar to what Brind'Amour was able to do.
Yeah, I think, and to Matt Casey's point, and to hammer home what John just said, I really do think we're past the off-ice stuff. I think that's – I don't want to necessarily call it water under the bridge. The damage was done, whatever, but it's –
Christ, someone's gonna get real pissed.
No, don't take it that way. But it's happened, and I think that moving forward, we're not going to see it again. So that begs the question: the type of coach that Torts is he going to respond well? And I think he does. I think he can answer the challenge, and I think he'd be up for it. And again, great point when it comes to the roles on that top line, but I don't know, man. I have a hard time believing he's going to be the guy that people are going to put expectations on him to be. So I don't know. I don't want to necessarily say he thrives, but I think it's more so thriving than, completely the wheels falling off.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
so did we split on that, or what? Derek, what's your final answer? Either
that was a very political answer, my friend.
Yeah.
Well, I got to tiptoe around that topic. No, but
you already said water under the bridge.
So Derek, does he thrive or die?
He thrives.
Okay.
All right.
If he dies, he dies.
And Casey, I think you honestly, I think you think he thrives it too. I don't think you actually think he's going to fall flat.
Listen to John trying to put words in your mouth.
I went back and forth because I was like, they're all not going to thrive as much. I'm like the optimist of the group. We've established that. Like, I was like, thrive. Yeah, definitely thrive. Like, I was like, okay, I've watched a grand total of like 4 Tony D'Angelo games, and I wasn't paying attention to the guy, any of them. So, like,
I can't. The Flyers, right?
The comparison I'm putting in my head is Gostisbehere. Like, that's like, oh, he's like a little bit of a better, or like, the Gostisbehere type player. And I'm picturing that within Tortorella, and I don't see that working at all. But, every player is different. And so if he thrives, I'll be absolutely happy. And I won't be shocked one bit. But I had to throw a little drama in there.
A little death.
Throw
some death on it.
There you go. All right. Moving on to another former Torts guy, Cam Atkinson. John, stop. God damn it, stop it.
What?
I don't know why you get that look in your eye. You're like, but no. So, thrive or die, John.
I mean, to me, again, this is another short conversation. I don't see how he doesn't thrive. I mean, this is the Torts guy. You know what I mean? Unless Cam Atkinson, it's progression or, just like falls off a cliff and he has a down year and all of a sudden they're at it with each other. I feel like this is the biggest Torts fan of them all. He's very bought in to the system, where I'd be shocked if he dies within this.
All right. Matt Casey.
Yeah, I think this is an easy call for thrive, and I'd go so far as to say he is the model for how to thrive and how to grow underneath Tortorella, and that can be used incredibly beneficially for a lot of the younger guys on the team who might not understand why Torts is doing these things, and being such a prick and doing bag skates and all sorts of stuff. But like, I think like Cam, if he's not named the captain, and we don't have to get in the captain conversation, but like he is going to be one of, if not the biggest leader in that locker room, in my opinion. And from a vocal and a team reliance standpoint, like I think that's him. Whether or not he talks to the referees the most, I don't really care. But I think, you know, to John's point, unless they get into a ridiculous argument, like, you know, what was better, Top Gun Maverick or the original Top Gun, and they like Torth and Cam just can't get along after that. They're like, what are you kidding me? Goose dies, the son's of butts. Come on.
It's like that video of the guys arguing over Wizard of Oz. You were a crowd and he came down in a bubble, dog. Grow up.
I've never seen that, but it sounds
Oh, that's a great video.
I
haven't
highly
seen this
suggest
either.
watching that. Hoagie, what do you think about Cam Atkinson?
290 points and 408 games played says it all right there. That's Atkinson under towards Rain in Columbus. I did my homework.
Hoagie.
That was Hoagie capitalizing on us never letting him talk. He's like, well,
Pretty much. I did the homework.
stop looking at
Hoagie capitalizing on
beast
doing
porn
prep
and-
work. Yeah.
There's your golf clap for the week.
Listen,
Good
he's
job,
thriving. I don't know how else to even to steer that. He's thriving no matter what. Like we all said, he's going to be a leader in the locker room for Torts, and going to be the guy that talks to these younger guys to kind of lead them through whatever Torts has going on in his crazy head. So
Sure.
I'm excited for Atkinson to thrive. I think we're going to see more of Atkinson than we did last year.
Mm-hmm. That was exciting too, because the way he came out of the gates last year, he came out hot and he was playing really well. So not even just maintaining that, but if he can do that again and also play at a higher level throughout the season with Tortorella, no reason to think he doesn't thrive. I'm fully on board with that. Matt Casey, again, great point when it comes to he's towards his guy. So, you know, putting those two together, pressure for Atkinson to be that guy, I think he can answer to it, and he can definitely thrive under Tortorella. Which brings us to another.
Sorry,
Go
do you
ahead.
think like all of last year, like Atkinson was sitting there just be like, Torts would never would have done this, like just like judging the hell out of it? Like I guarantee he was like, and that's why he was so
That thought
adamant
crossed
about
his head.
like, yeah,
He was after every game he would text Torts. He's like, "You're never gonna believe what AV just did."
smoke
that
to pack
sorry
the parliaments.
With his martinis.
Came out during the second intermission and just said, "Okay, boys, let's pack it in."
Good
Said-
process. Good process.
Good process. Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of smaller forwards, we get to Travis Konechny. One guy that I have a feeling a lot of us are going to agree on, but that's why we discuss it. So, Hoagie, you go first. Is TK going to thrive or die under Tortorella?
I have him thriving.
Wow.
I think we're going to see a different TK. Listen, he has 147 points in the past 3 years, and that's under AV's regime or what have you. He's been a sneaky good player. Yeah, he's not scoring all the goals that we want him to do, like we saw in 2019, 2020. But he's racked up a lot of assists over that time. So I think under this whole transition period of defense to offense, I think Konechny's going to thrive with the right line mates.
Okay. Interesting points. What do you think, Casey?
I want him to thrive, but I have him dying. I don't think, similar to the way I put Tony in, I don't think he's set to be a prime first line scoring winger. Like we've seen flashes of it. I just don't think the consistency's there. His game is to be chippy and a little bit, Marchand-esque obnoxious, and I appreciate that about him. I don't know how much room Tortorella is going to have in his room for that kind of stuff. But on the flip side, maybe he really likes it. Maybe that's the kind of stuff that gets the team sparked and going. Where I really kind of settled down on it is I just think he's going to be making enough mental capacity mistakes, and his scoring isn't going to outshine that for him to really thrive under this system. So I have him going 6 feet under, folks. He's done.
Ooh, all right. It's tied 1-1. What do we think, John?
I struggled the most with this one because I think part of me feels like Tortorella is going to get the most out of TK. I just wonder if the most out of TK is what we need as a team. Like, similar to what you said, Casey, where I just don't think he's going to be able to provide what the Flyers demand of him right now in the current role that he's in. But I don't necessarily think that has anything to do with like Tortorella. I just think that has to do with his overall ceiling. So I think that we'll see an improved Travis Konechny under Tortorella. But I think like when we're having a conversation at the end of this season, we're not going to be pleased enough with that improvement. So I guess he thrives. But like, you know,
it's a real roundabout way to get to where you got here.
Well, yeah, but am I making somewhat sense? Like, I just think that it's not based off of Tortorella. I think that he'll play fine under Tortorella, but I think that like for what this team needs Travis Konechny to be, he's just not going to meet those expectations.
All right, so you have him thriving.
I do. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Hoagie, that I had a little bit more than have him thriving.
I mean, it was straight and to the point. I don't get the discrepancy with that response, but I've got him dying because I just don't think he's going to answer well to it. I really don't. And as much as, you know, you want to call me an optimist, I'm predispositioned to think that a person should respond towards a style of coaching because it's motivational. He can really light a fire under these guys. I just don't see that. And not to say that he's not capable of doing so. I just don't think it happens. I just don't see it.
So we split on that one. We run that one back.
Right down the screen.
Yep. All right.
Unfortunately.
Well, that's sometimes how the cards fall. So we get to one last individual that we're going to talk about this week, and that is Rasmus Ristolainen. And this one I feel like is going to be a good one too. So, John, do you have Rasmus Ristolainen thriving or dying under John Tortorella?
Yeah, I have him dying. As much as I appreciate Ristolainen as a player, I just see the mistakes that he can make are kind of like his lackluster approach to defense occasionally. I could see that really pissing off John Tortorella. He just doesn't seem like a player that really meshes his style well. And I also think that like Ristolainen seems like the kind of guy who's not going to change much either. So yeah, I just don't think that this marriage is going to work too well. Good thing we don't have him signed to a long extension or anything.
Yeah, good thing. Hoagie, what do you think, man?
I have him dying as well. I think he's just going to get lost in the whole defensive core there. That he's just going to make a lot of mistakes, and like John said, he's going to piss off Tortorella and maybe even get replaced by somebody down the line. I don't know. He's an interesting defender right there.
How about you, Casey?
Going the other way, boys. I got him thriving.
We knew it.
There it is.
I will forever be the Ristolainen lover. But look, you look at all the points you guys made. I get it. That's the point that all the sheeps make. But here is what we know about Ristolainen is he is the one person who beat out Provorov last year in terms of being in the best shape on the team. The guy's a freaking machine. Like, he is an absolute animal. And so he can play the minutes. He can be aggressive. He can get the body. He's a big, nasty mofo. Number two, I would argue that Ristolainen, if there's anyone on this team who's like, God damn, I need to get coached. Like, this guy has been dealt the worst set of cards from a coaching standpoint that you could possibly imagine. He obviously has some skill. You see it flash here and there, but he hasn't had the consistent coaching. What's our defensive coach name? Is it Shaw? Is that right?
I believe so, yeah.
Brad Shaw.
Yeah.
Bradshaw.
Everything I heard about him is he's just a very he's no nonsense. He goes in there and he tells you what you need to do. And the other thing is the goal of this team this year, for better or for worse, is to be harder to play against. Is there anyone to be harder to play against than Rasmus Ristolainen? And I think he's not going to be a top pairing defenseman. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying he's thriving to the point of becoming an all-star. But I do think if he can get the coaching and the structure in there from Shaw and from Tortorella, and he can maximize the potential that he has, he can use the gifts and the size and the strength and the beast and nastiness that he has in order to thrive in this system. So, John and Hoagie, I disagree with you.
I am with you. I agree.
Gosh.
No, fantastic points, first and foremost. I agree with all of them. I think that the big thing there that you touched on is that he has not had consistent coaching for his entire NHL career, being in Buffalo, now in Philadelphia, where you've just been through Gordon, AV, and then you've been with Yo, and now you're with Tortorella. If Tortorella could stick around, I think that Rasmus Ristolainen, again, won't be an all-star, won't be this premier defensive-minded defenseman, whatever you want to call him, but he'll play the role that he's meant to play with this team, and that is second pairing. We saw glimpses last year of him and Sanheim being a very good unit when it came to playing defense. They were very successful. They were sometimes, I should say most times, the most consistent and best pairing that the Flyers had. Again, not saying that warrants him playing on the top line or not, but it's a good sign. Now, is it great that we're paying him what we're paying him? No. But at the same rate, it's kind of the going rate for these types of defensemen. So you had to, if you wanted to keep him, and Chuck Fletcher's not going to announce that mistake. He's not going to fess up to that. So here we are. Let's try to make the best of it. Get a guy like
down on that mistake. He doubled down.
You're right. He did double down on that mistake. But now's Ristolainen's chance to prove everybody else talking bad about him wrong. And I think he could do it. I think that, again, there's always going to be discourse when it comes to him. But I think that he can absolutely rise to the occasion and be a pretty good defenseman for the Flyers, given that the coaching stays consistent. That's the biggest thing that's been missing from his career. And I think that, we'll see, hopefully, that come to fruition this season. You missed a lot, John.
Yeah. Good.
So we went even split on that one. So we all agree on Atkinson.
Yep.
We split on TK. We split on Risto. And I was the lone die on Tony D.
Yeah. But you changed your mind, remember?
No, I said I had sympathy, but
No. So that wraps up Thrive or Die for this week. We'll dive into 4 new players here next week. Whether we discuss some questions, whether something else pops up, where there's another report card out there that the Flyers flunked to, we'll discuss that also.
Maybe Wade Allison signs a contract.
Let's not get carried away.
Yeah, right.
But before we sign off here tonight, Hoagie, as you always do, please, God, give us a good one this week.
Did you know they made a dating site for arsonists? They just set you up with all the matches.
I can see John's nose flaring and go. He's so angry about that one.
These things, at this point, they just really piss me off. I can't believe this thing still goes on every week.
Until you think it's something better, hey, we're just going to keep rolling with it.
No segment.
I don't think that's better. All right. Well, we're going to kick it over to Matt Casey. Let them know where they're going to be able to find you.
Hey guys, I'm over on Twitter at PodStreetCasey. That's PodStreetCasey, Casey on Twitter. PodStreetCasey. Thanks.
You did spell it out. I just wasn't paying attention. Hoagie.
Yeah, that app that Casey mentioned. I'm on there at Podstreet Oaks.
It's better than that Twitter thing.
Oh, God,
All right, John.
changing your name to Mongo. Yeah, you can find this podcast on all your various podcast listening receptacles. If you're watching this stream, which doesn't look like anybody is, but if you're watching this stream, it's scrolling below. And if you're not watching it, you're listening to us on something. Just stick with what you got. It's good for now.
Wonderful. Wonderfully put.
Feels good. It makes you happy. Just stick with it, you know?
Right.
Check out our affiliates over there at Flyers HW, Flyers High and Wide on Twitter, 5 Minute Major Podcast on Twitter at 5 Min Major Pod. You can find me on there at Pod Street Bob. John's on there at Pod Street Cove. The 4 of us are on there at Pod SD Bullies. And now it is time for the 4 of us to say goodbye.
Bye now.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
No.
Bye now.